Hello there. Today we're diving into the turbulent waters of political discourse. Today we're looking at something that's less about politics and more about a blatant disregard for the truth. Donald Trump's most egregious false claims. Sure, exaggerating the traffic on the way to your grandma's house on Thanksgiving is one thing, but claiming you had the biggest inauguration crowd in history when photographic evidence shows otherwise, that's a whole different kettle of alternative facts. So buckle up, dear viewers, as we embark on this roller coaster ride through some of the most notable, eyebrow-raising and jaw-dropping false or misleading statements made by Donald Trump during his political career. Let's get started. Remember Trump's inauguration, the one where everyone was supposedly clamoring to see him sworn in? Yeah, about that. Trump repeatedly insisted that his inauguration crowd was the largest ever assembled. Bigger than Obama's, bigger than anyone's. He even had his press secretary Sean Spicer make the claim, despite photographic evidence and the National Park Service contradicting him. The audacity to stand there and claim with zero evidence that he had the biggest, the bestest, the most tremendous inauguration crowd ever. It's almost admirable in its absurdity. But here's the thing, folks, this wasn't just some harmless exaggeration. It was a deliberate attempt to distort reality and create an alternative narrative, a pattern we'd see repeated throughout his presidency. Now, let's talk about Trump's favorite hobby horse voter fraud. Specifically, his baseless claim that millions of people voted illegally in the 2016 election, costing him the popular vote. He tweeted about it, ranted about it, even set up a commission to investigate it. And what did this very serious, very official commission find? Absolutely nothing. It's like claiming you lost your car keys because a leprechaun stole them to build a tiny house in your sock drawer. This wasn't just about a bruised ego from losing the popular vote. It was about sowing doubt in the very foundation of American democracy, undermining faith in the electoral process. The COVID-19 pandemic. During those uncertain times, Trump decided to grace us with this gem. Anybody that wants a test can get a test. Sounds reassuring, right? Except it was complete and utter hogwash. At the time, testing was incredibly limited, with long wait times and confusing criteria for eligibility. And what's worse, this wasn't just a case of Trump being out of touch. His administration actively downplayed the severity of the pandemic, discouraged testing, and even promoted unproven treatments. It was a masterclass in misinformation and a stark reminder that when it comes to public health, facts matter. Chapter 4, Charlottesville, where even neo-Nazis have very fine people. After a horrifying display of white supremacy and violence where a counter-protester was killed, Trump, in a truly baffling display of moral flexibility, said there were very fine people on both sides. On one side, you had neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other assorted bigots chanting racist slogans and wielding torches. On the other, you had people protesting against hate and bigotry. And Trump looked at that and said, yeah, both sides have some good points. This wasn't just a gaffe or a poor choice of words. It was a blatant attempt to normalize white supremacy and draw a false equivalency between hate groups and those who oppose them. But Chapter 5. The Canadian trade deficit that wasn't. Sorry, Canada, you're off the hook for now. Remember when Trump declared a trade war on Canada? He repeatedly claimed that the United States had a massive trade deficit with our friendly neighbors to the north. But here's the thing, when you look at the actual trade data, the United States actually had a trade surplus with Canada. It's like going to a restaurant, ordering a salad, and then throwing a tantrum because the table next to you got a steak, even though you could have ordered one too. This wasn't just a case of Trump misunderstanding basic economics. It was a deliberate attempt to demonize a close ally and use fear-mongering to advance his protectionist agenda. Chapter 6, Hurricane Dorian and the curious case of the Sharpie drawn path. Remember Hurricane Dorian, that massive storm that devastated the Bahamas? Well, Trump decided to add his own unique brand of chaos to the situation by tweeting that Alabama would be hit by the hurricane. The problem? Alabama was nowhere near the hurricane's path. The National Weather Service even issued a correction stating unequivocally that Alabama would not be affected. But did Trump admit he was wrong? Of course not. Instead, he doubled down, even going so far as to display a weather map in the Oval Office that had been altered with a Sharpie to include Alabama in the hurricane's path. This wasn't just a harmless mistake, it was a blatant attempt to rewrite reality and silence anyone who dared to contradict him, even when it came to potentially life-saving information. Chapter 7. Mexico will pay for the wall? Spoiler alert, they didn't. One of Trump's most repeated campaign promises was that he would build a wall on the US-Mexico border and that Mexico would pay for it. It was his rallying cry, his signature issue, the thing he promised would single-handedly solve all of America's immigration woes. But here's the thing, Mexico never agreed to pay for the wall. In fact, they repeatedly and very publicly stated that they would not be footing the bill for Trump's vanity project. And guess what? They didn't. The wall, or at least the portions that were actually built, was funded by US taxpayers, despite Trump's repeated promises to the contrary. Chapter 8. The best economy ever that wasn't, unless you only look at certain numbers and squint really hard. Trump loved to brag about the economy during his presidency. He called it the best economy in history, the greatest economy ever, and other hyperbolic phrases that would make even the most enthusiastic used car salesman blush. He pointed to the stock market, which admittedly did reach record highs during his term, but what he conveniently ignored were the other economic indicators that told a less rosy story. This wasn't just a case of Trump cherry-picking data to fit his narrative. It was a deliberate attempt to mislead the public and take credit for economic trends that were already in motion before he took office. Chapter 9. Tariff Tango, a story of China. Paying absolutely nothing. Remember Trump's trade war with China, the one where he slapped tariffs on billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods? Well, according to Trump, China was paying for those tariffs. He said it repeatedly with the utmost confidence, as if it were an indisputable fact. But here's the thing. Tariffs are taxes, and guess who pays taxes? That's right, consumers and businesses. So while Trump was busy patting himself on the back for his supposed negotiating prowess, American businesses and consumers were footing the bill for his trade war. It's like going to a restaurant, ordering the most expensive thing on the menu, and then refusing to pay, claiming that the restaurant is actually paying you to eat there. It's absurd, it's illogical, and it's just plain wrong. Chapter 10, Climate Change, the hoax, that's very, very real. And finally, let's talk about climate change, an issue that Trump repeatedly dismissed as a hoax perpetrated by the Chinese. He pulled the US out of the Paris Agreement, rolled back environmental regulations, and generally acted like climate change was nothing more than an elaborate prank orchestrated by scientists and environmentalists. But here's the thing, climate change is real, it's happening right now, and it's having a devastating impact on our planet and its inhabitants. From more extreme weather events to rising sea levels to mass extinctions, the evidence is overwhelming. This wasn't just a case of Trump being misinformed. It was a deliberate attempt to prioritize short-term economic gains over the long-term health of our planet, a decision that will have far-reaching consequences for generations to come. Outro, stay informed, stay vigilant. So there you have it, folks. A whirlwind tour of some of the most egregious, false and misleading statements made by Donald Trump during his time in the political spotlight. But it's important to remember that this isn't just about Trump. It's about a broader trend of misinformation and disinformation that's eroding trust in institutions and undermining our ability to have productive conversations about important issues. So what can we do about it? Stay informed, fact-check everything, and don't be afraid to call out BS when you see it. Thanks for watching.